This conference will now be recorded.
And so I think the basic where I come down to is, I think it's important for us to kind of figure, set a goal to almost like dominate this market locally, because again, everything I've seen is really poor, right? And I think thinking about this, let me just go through some kind of hypothesis or assumptions here. Is first of all, it's a addressable market that would we can play with the numbers a little bit, but in general, we're not, in an MRR sense, we're not going after bigger companies, right? We're not going after, we may land one or two, but it's in a 100 to 250 employee range. It's far more likely that they're going to have an internal IT department. If they have an internal IT department, it's also going to be small. And that guy that wrote the book, I forget his name, Bob Coppridge or whatever his name.
Yeah, that's Bob.
He actually confirms a hypothesis I had by just asking people within SDP, and that a lot of our co-managed clients literally have like one person in IT. I know that we have some cases where you get multiple people, but in general, like one or two tend to be the people that actually are seeking this out, right?
I agree.
But what's the missing link to me is there's not a clear value proposition for people. Like we just say the word co-manage and we say what we do, but what it really is people outsource work to us that doesn't make sense for them to do internally.
Well, and I think what's further exacerbated that, and this has probably even happened since we first started talking about this as a group, is now the current workforce shortage, I think, has only further made that case, because I think there's an argument to be made, and this was actually a discussion that came up, I don't know if you were in on it, Doug, but this is a discussion that came up at the conference where, part of that messaging is too, hey, you can't hire anybody. Why are you even trying to do this anymore? Hire us. And so, when we talk about pain points, let's say I'm a IT director or a CIO at a company like you just described. A pain point I have is I have a position to fill and I can't. And then you couple that with all of the other things that we already know is an attraction of co-managed, which is, even if you do hire somebody, you've got a relatively limited skill set in that one person. Availability is not 24/7. Even cost in some cases is greater and so on. So I guess just to make sure I'm understanding, what are our objectives for this conversation today? What do we hope to have at the end of this call that we did not have at the beginning of this call today?
So what I hope to have at the beginning of the call is work we can start collaborating on short term to kind of move the ball forward along the dimensions I'm discussing here.
And what does work mean? Does it mean marketing materials? Does it mean pain points? What is it?
I think what it's going to get down to is the starting point I would have. So I sent you a document that goes with this, which is basically a website page that I developed for the Pullmans. So I think it's marketing materials plus case studies, basically. I think what we want to do is we want to have the offering well defined and the value proposition clear to people, and then it's how do we go from that clarity to having the marketing materials that can help us start getting appointments really quickly. So it's in effect kind of jointly developing and implementing a marketing and prospecting campaign for co-managed, but getting the basics done first. Does that explain halfway decently?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about then is identifying the pain points and then what our responses to those pain points are. And I see in the document you've already done that to a certain degree. You've got those bullets. I'm not sure that addresses all the pain points, so I don't know if it makes sense for us to elaborate on that. And I don't know how important it is to have all of them covered. But
I think going through this page really tells us what the content should be. I guess that's where I'm going.
And I guess one marketing concept I wanted to throw out there that's applicable to this, but really any exercise we would do like this is, let's say that we come up with 8 pain points that we think are relative to this particular service offering. And then we start talking about content related to those pain points. Exactly. I'm beginning to be of the opinion that instead of writing one case study or one article or one blog post or one thing that covers all 8 pain points. We really need to look at that as kind of the script for us to develop a whole suite of content around that, with each pain point kind of being its own discussion, all connecting back to this overarching theme of co-managed.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Agree with that?
Yeah, and I think we're on 100% the same page. And I think the only thing, well, I'll get into the next page, but the only thing here is to say what's the essential value proposition, right? That's kind of what I want to get to on this page, which was, why do people buy this stuff, right?
Well, it's to solve their pain. I hate to sound like an echo chamber for Michael Cummings, but I mean, that's the reason they do that. Is, you know, you'd mentioned 4 bullet points here that they have. I think there's more. They do it to solve those problems. So
yeah,
I think the question is, how do we get people to say, yes, that's my problem, and then say, okay, now I believe you can fix that problem.
Correct. I'm with you. And I think the reason I go to case studies, I think like the brief story, like if people can actually see concrete examples of what this is, it would help us across the board in terms of business development.
Right, like, so using the staff shortage pain point as a thing, we could say, hey, you know, ABC company was trying to hire somebody for 6 months, and as a result of not being able to fill this position, they missed this deliverable, and they didn't do this, and this sucked, and all of this. And then they realized that they could hire AtNet Plus to come in there and do that. Not only did they, you know, solve this, and this problem, but the unexpected benefit was this too. Wouldn't you like to have that too? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, and I think the thing Connor brought up when we were talking about this previously too is, what you want them to see is this is like a pivot point, right? Like, it's not, you could keep going the way you're going, or you can do something fundamentally different, right? And what's fundamentally different, co-managed, is I'm going to take all this work and resources that get devoted to network management. This is a core value proposition, right? Is I'm going to take that work and give it to you guys, right? And that allows us to take those time and resources and reinvest them on the on my internal IT side to do things that makes more sense for the IT department to do.
Well, one of the conversations I've had with people in co-manage about this is to, and again, this is where you got to be careful with your audience, because use this specific example, is we've had conversations where somebody wants us to do something else, and through the conversation we find out the reason they want us to do this help desk is because they're busy doing an Office 365 migration.
Correct.
And what I say to them is, well, great, we're happy to help with the help desk, but why is your internal team spending time learning how to do an Office 365 migration that they will never ever do again unless they leave your company? And then moving on to another project they're going to have to figure out the first time. Why don't you tap our experience having done it already, because you're never going to do it again anyway. And then we can still do your help desk, but free you guys up. You know, I think, but the problem is there's some guys that they don't care whether that's efficient or not for the company. They just like working on things like that, and they choose to do that, even though it's not efficient for the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll explain the divergence there on the next page too. The other thing I found, this came out of like when outsourcing was big in the enterprise world when it first started coming out, is the whole concept was you outsource stuff that's non-core. That's not a core competency. What you want to do from an IT standpoint, focus on those things that actually make your business more successful, right? And that's your core competency. You're smiling.
Here's because you know why? Because IT people don't care. That's what's crazy, is you're assuming IT people are business people, and that's usually more often than not the case. In other words, IT people, again, don't care what's right for the business. They care about working on whatever cool little gadgety crap they want to work on, at the detriment of the company sometimes. And I hate to be like a negative Nancy on that, but I think that's the reality I've seen.
We'll talk about that on the next page, actually, because I don't know what the dynamics been, but it's either like the business side is the one that's got the pain.
So I think the first thing you have to do is assess if the IT director or CIO you're talking to is coming more at the business angle or is coming at it from the technology angle, because I think those are different conversations.
I agree. Yeah, and that's got reflected in the content, right?
Yeah. So the question I had on the case study thing is, you know, I understand the purpose of this exercise is for us to develop content that we can share. The problem I have with case studies and sharing those is I really feel like the implied message in a case study is that a particular case study is for a client that is currently your client. How is it going to make sense for us to share content around case studies?
Well, you can either, what I was going to suggest is you just do it as a disguised case study, right?
So you don't name the client?
You don't name the client.
And at no point are you saying this is my client?
No.
Right. Do you feel like that's viable?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a case, yeah, we used to do it all the time, actually. Right. And so it has to be true, but it doesn't have to be, it can be.
It doesn't have to be your truth, it just has to be a truth?
No, it should be true, right? But you don't have to name the client. Right. Because what you really want to do.
But don't you think it's implied that it's your client? I don't want
to. No, you imply it's your client, you just don't reveal their name.
But, okay, so let's say I write a case study on one of my clients. Are we expecting Doug and Connor to use that same case study or not?
Yes, I would say, well,
But then it's not their client.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No. Yeah, I mean, in the context of the case study. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we can think through that. I think we can go through the specific case studies and see where there is overlap or not overlap. Or we develop our own case studies. I don't think it's, once we get into the process, I don't think it's that difficult.
Okay. I'll table my thoughts on that until we get to that point.
And then there's other marketing content beyond case studies that we can make more cross-purpose, I guess.
Okay.
But I think the big thing I get is the big thing is what would be distinct for us is talking about much more, like you said, pain points, but also just showing stories of how people have benefited from co-managed and on two dimensions, right? I think everything I've seen is just this, here's co-managed, we do this, are you interested? So it's very promotional in nature. It's not actually very educational, illustrative, or demonstrative in content.
I mean, like telling a story.
Yeah. And I think what people do in co-managed actually requires stories in a sense, right? Because what you're really trying to do is say you should think about outsourcing to us work that you're currently doing in-house. That's fundamentally what outsourcing is, right? So the question is why would we do that, right?
Well, and I think to take a page out of, Doug, did you read Bob's book on co-managed IT?
I didn't.
I really do highly recommend it. He's, like I mentioned, he's a local competitor, but I will give him a lot of credit for his vision on this. And I think one of the things that he points out that I think we'd still need to figure out how we're going to address is this whole idea around, there's this inherent mistrust of MSPs by internal IT people thinking we're going after their jobs. And what do we do to reinforce to them that this is not just an elaborate play to take their jobs, right? I mean, one way to do that is to position yourself, MSP-wise, as this is all we do. We don't go in there and fully manage anything. We're only co-managed. I don't think any of us are particularly interested in doing that. So the challenge is, how do we straddle that line between presenting ourselves as somebody who'll go in and fully manage everything, but not in your situation. In your situation, we're just going to co-manage it, right? Like, how does the guy get comfortable with that? And I think Bob in his book, has some thoughts about that, but I don't know that he ever really fully reconciles that. So what's that?
We'll do that on the next page, actually.
Okay, I'm getting ahead then.
I have the answer, actually. I think I have an answer. So then what I really want to get to, we got to figure out how we get to, point A to point B to point C. But I think what we really want to end up with is shared assets across at least the three of us, or the Connor doesn't come out, we'll get somebody else. But basically kind of defining and implementing this campaign together, and then kind of implementing it together and then fixing it as it goes along, right?
And when you say a campaign, you're talking about like a full suite of activities, including case studies, blog postings, pay-per-click, webinars, all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's what's missing. I don't know what you see in your marketplace, but I don't. And then actually even potentially calling and prospecting too. But we'll get to that part.
Well, and I would see calling and prospecting largely be disseminating the content, right? In other words, I'm not going to try to have a conversation with you. I'm just going to get permission to send you the content.
Correct.
So
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just got to work that part out, but we just need the basics first. Like for example, we need a list.
Right.
We all have a list of 100 to 250 employees across that, right?
So, I mean, here's the deal. Doug and I believe Connor as well, all three of us have marketing managers or somebody in this position that's responsible for this activity. I mean, obviously, I think we, from a visionary perspective, need to be involved in this conversation, but frankly, most of this work is not going to be done by me, and I doubt by Doug, and I doubt by Connor. We really need to have our marketing people involved. What's the vision there as far as, like, today, is the intent that we're going to be writing content here, or is this really more for us to kind of map out the vision?
It's kind of like my old days used to call this project definition and plan.
Okay.
So right now it's like phase 0, or whatever terminology we tend to use, but it's really like defining the problem, defining the scope, defining, at least the initial set of activities, and then we can have a working group. Could, like, the marketing people might, instead of having us on the call, we might have the marketing people on the call, right? Or we have everybody plus the marketing people, right?
Well, I mean, because frankly, it's not only me just saying I don't have time to do this, but I don't even know that I'm the best person to do this. I think Marissa's got a lot more strength in this category than I do, so it'd be better off to have her run with it anyway. I think
initially we need to be defining the content for them, though. Like, what does, so we'll get into that, but it's like, what is basically the information that needs to get translated into the marketing assets, right? And I think where we add value is crisping up all this stuff, right? Like, what is it, what is the value proposition? What are examples of pain that they solve, right? Together, I think we can do a better job of that together. Then once we got that kind of structure together, then we go into, okay, what's the campaign start to look like, and let's start producing it, right?
Quick question, Jay. Would you take on a co-managed agreement that you only did the level 1 support or not?
Yes, we would. In fact, we've got some active conversations we're having right now around that, and we've done that in the past. I'm trying to think if any of our active ones are like that.
I think that's a relatively new phenomenon. How would you answer the question you asked, Douglas?
So we would not. For us, co-managed means they're the boots on the ground. We're the next level support and projects and planning.
So you would not do outsource help desk?
I wouldn't take an agreement if they told me, hey, I want to keep my higher level engineers. I want you guys to answer the phones and do all the end user support. We wouldn't take that on.
I think that's a good distinction to outline here, because obviously, you're not going to be terribly interested in working up content that moves to that position.
Yeah,
then.
Yeah, but you might, right? I think Connor's got one like that too.
And to be clear too, like, we'll do first level support if they also have first level support. Like, if it's like, let's say they have a guy in Houston and I'm doing San Antonio, like, okay, fine. But like, if somebody called me and said, hey, I want to fire all my tier 1s and I want you guys to do all first level support and answer the phones, that wouldn't be a good agreement to take.
And I'm not disputing it at all. I just want to understand, can you help me understand why that's not attractive to you?
That's like the lowest value thing that we do as a company and the highest headache. And I have no control over the number of tickets they're going to give me. I mean, if their guys do a crap project, I take the ticket brunt, like that kind of, it seemed like a lot of liability and a lot of risk for us. And I never could price it to where I felt like I felt good about it either. I mean, to me too, it seems like they're coming at you because that's probably the hardest part. It's the lowest value and hardest part of the agreement. And they're telling you, we can't figure this out. So that's what I tell our salespeople, at least. Thankfully, I've never had that scenario, I don't think, where somebody said, will you answer all our phone calls? I don't think I've ever had that happen, but we've told our salespeople that that's kind of the line in the sand.
So we had a lead come in 2 weeks ago for a local university where they need the equivalent of 6 bodies full time just to take those calls. And we're trying to figure out how to get the bodies.
It's a staffing play then. It's not a managed services play.
That's staffing. Yeah.
That'd be my argument. If you want to call it staffing and make it its own thing. But I would hate to dump that into my managed services workflow.
That's an interesting point. Thanks for sharing. Okay.
Sorry.
So I think, then we need to be mindful of the content and make sure that it's speaking to that audience. And
Yeah,
I think honestly,
I just didn't
those
know
two
if
different.
I didn't know if you were going to build anything that overtly said like, we'll take all your phone calls. Like, I didn't know if that's what you were going to write anyway, but.
Well, I think, they're both two different versions of managed services, and I think they're different enough that that could almost stand on its own as an offering and a campaign around it. So I'm fine if we want to collectively work with, and honestly, I don't think that we have the capacity to take on campaigns for both approaches anyway. So from a collective perspective, if we want to collaborate on the, what you would consider to be the definition of true co-managed, I'm fine with that. And then independently, we can come back later on our own and work on a concurrent campaign to do, the other type, if that's even, you may very well compel me to, align my thinking more along what you're saying, but I'm fine with that, so.
All good.
I'm with you. See, this is helpful, right? I mean, this kind of conversation, because it helps us sharpen the strategy or whatever you want to say it too.
Yeah,
right?
It defines what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think I'm just a little further down the pike a little bit because I've been thinking about this a lot. But what I really wanted to get down to as well here, come on, I don't know why this does do this, is he also, it actually goes into the book, but it's fundamentally true, is you really have two different audiences that we have to target for this value proposition.
Right. Two different messages, completely agree.
Right, one is, and the CFO is where I think we want to aim the one set of case studies actually at C levels. My opinion would be CFOs specifically. But what we've got to do is say, what are the pain points that they may be experiencing, and how does that drive them to a what we're calling co-managed, or I prefer to just call it outsourced network management solution, right? So you got to make that bridge between, here's some problems in your business, here's what we offer, but the middle part is, it just makes your IT department able to focus on things that matter more.
Well, and this is kind of what I was referring to earlier when I said, is it a business conversation or is it a technical conversation? It's a business conversation. That's a CFO type conversation. If it's an IT director, that tends to be a more technical conversation.
Yeah.
So the other thing that
I think it's both, actually.
And the other thing I think kind of fits into this, especially if it's more the IT director versus like the CFO, is, and again, this comes out of the book, is, Doug, earlier you said, fire your whole, whatever staff and outsource it to us. There's the argument to be made that none of the materials ever comes across from the viewpoint of fire anybody to put us in. It's more about, it's attrition, it's, you made the strategic decision. I'm not trying to compel you to cause people to lose their jobs. I'm just trying to be here to fill a gap that you can't fill on your own. And I think, again, if we're talking about kind of ground rules for how we're going to approach this, we may want to advocate for the point of view that we never position it as fire people.
Right.
Would you be in agreement?
Yeah,
Hey, Connor.
Absolutely.
My apologies, guys. You deserve better.
That's okay, my friend. We recorded for you anyway. So
You should see the amount of work we assign to you.
That's great. Thanks, Doug.
I think we're kind of catching up anyway, too, because what it basically says in co-managed, you need to have two distinct value propositions. You got to have the C-level value proposition. You have to have the IT partnership value proposition. Right? Makes sense so far? And
Connor, just to, I'm sorry, Doug and Michael, but just to make sure Connor is kind of in agreement with kind of the ground rules we've already established, is we've kind of said that there's two different flavors of co-managed. There's the co-managed where you're basically doing all the back-end management and so on, and then there's a co-managed where you do help desk. I think we've agreed that those two things are different enough, and that it makes sense for us to focus on the back-end one first. Doug, as an example, is not interested in ever really going after co-managed. That would just be outsourced help desk. Not sure what your position is on that, but I'm in agreement with Doug. Then let's just focus on the back-end stuff. And if you want to do like outsourced help desk, then you and I could work together on different materials. It's a different message anyway. So are you on the same page as far as that?
Yeah, generally strategically keeping help desk in-house makes more sense for organizations because, as we all know, the greatest demand on help desk is key line of business applications.
Right.
And it's also generally when we run into this is their comfort level of outsourcing everything else is high, but not help desk because they're so used to having that immediate response, not only to line of business applications, but any IT applications. And so it's usually a degradation of service in terms of response time when they outsource that help desk.
Excellent. So you've actually made additional compelling points to the ones that Doug already made. So all the more justification for not going down that road. And then the other thing that we agreed on is just this idea that there's different messaging, as Michael was saying, for the CFO than there is for the IT director. One's more of a business level conversation. One tends to be a little bit more of a technical conversation. So any campaigns or content or whatever probably need to deliberately speak to those two different audiences differently. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
The other thing that I have been encouraging our team is to completely drop the co-managed vernacular. And the way that we are simply presenting this, both to executives and IT people, is a done with you approach.
Mm-hmm.
So we did briefly touch on the whole labeling thing. And my only thing is I ask that we not call it commits like some people in the industry are trying to promote, because I think that just comes off too technical. You know, I hear what you're saying. What's your, and so you feel like the term co-managed doesn't convey that same message?
We just say, look, you can do IT where we do it for you, or we can do IT where we do it with you.
I like that.
That is so understandable to the executives and the IT people.
Do you have that trademarked, or can we use that?
You can use that. So I am, even in our marketing, we are moving towards away from managed services and a done for you IT approach, or a done with you IT approach. And from a consumer, a buyer standpoint, that's very understandable.
Well, I think what the other thing too is something that we touched on is it's important that especially if you're dealing with more of the IT director or CIO, is they don't feel like you're coming for their job.
Yeah, it eliminates all of those things that the word co-manage seems to elicit within people.
Right, because people tend to ignore the co part of it and they hear managed and they think that you're just trying to outsource everything.
Yep.
I think that's an excellent point.
So for example, so what we got to do is define kind of the pain points and the solution on the C side, and then have a value proposition around the IT partnership with the IT people.
Well, and the other thing that I think Bob does really well in his book is he talks about when we're doing, you know, and again, what was the term used? Not co-managed, but what did you call it, Connor?
Done with you.
Done with you. Is there another term you have for it though, or you always just say this is our done with you approach?
Yeah, just IT, it's either done for you or done with you.
Right.
What makes sense for your organization.
So let's say we're doing the done with you approach. Our goal is to make you look like a rock star, right? Or in other words, you know, when it comes to the C-level people, right, they want to know that operationally their IT is achieving the objectives of the business and so on. If you're talking to the IT director or CIO, they want to look good in their job. They want to be the guy who gets applauded for hiring whoever they hired, and they made all the decisions that got it done, regardless of how it got done, and they're the one that get all the glory. And I think, you know, that's how we kind of have to promote it, is we're going to make you look good. Connor, you did read the book by Bob about co-managed IT, right?
Nope.
Oh, I do highly recommend it. So if you haven't checked it out, I know Data was handing them out like candy at past conferences and such. And if you don't have a copy, we can get you one.
So like, for example, what the Paulmans, what I was trying to get them to do is say, what if you just did without thinking about people seeing it? Like, what if you did a webinar or a recorded session where you took your best co-managed client and you talked about what benefited the CFO, and then talked about how smooth and cooperative and collaborative a working relationship you had with the IT person. That would actually give you content on both sides, right? So on the right hand side, the right-hand
Yeah.
side, you want to be talking about examples like because you did co-manage, how did that IT person, benefit? Like, what would they be able to do? How do they make a bigger impact? Like,
The only challenge with that approach, though, Michael, is if it's the CFO that's really the decision maker there, then more often than not, the person who is in an IT role there is more of a help desk person who is not any sort of decision maker. Whereas the flip side, if you're talking to a prospect where it's the IT director, I mean, really, in a sense, the IT director still has the same role as the CFO in making the decision about outsourcing. It's just a question of whether they approach it more from a financial and business perspective rather than a technical perspective. So
Right.
I don't know that part of the audience is the internal help desk guy, because that
No,
person's not making any decisions about outsourcing.
the most senior IT person, right? Which is,
If there is one. And I think that's the challenge is you've got organizations that have a senior IT person, which is usually the IT director or CIO, and oftentimes a CFO or other C-level executive is not even involved in the decision. Or you have it where it's a C-level person and the only IT people are all juniors. Doug, Connor, is that the way you guys typically see it?
So you're saying there's two different levels on the right-hand side of the slide?
No, I'm saying that's the divider between the two sides that you have on screen now.
Okay, the way I would say it is keep it simpler. When executives are typically coming to us, it's because nobody's leading IT.
Mhm.
If they had their leader would be giving them the answers. So literally, it's that simple at the executive level is we don't have a leader in IT. A leader
If it's coming
says,
from the C-level.
Yep, from the C-level.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you run into friction on the IT people side, right, their IT department, is when those people think that they are the leader, even though the executives are saying, you don't know how to lead, you don't know how to plan, you don't know how to manage, you don't know how to execute, you don't know how to measure. But from our standpoint, right, and we're talking marketing here, right? How do we get people to even know us and like us?
Right.
To me, the core pain that the C-level people need is an IT leader. Every deal we've gotten, it's because in the co-managed space is because whoever is running their IT isn't getting the job done.
Yes.
Or there's nobody running IT is what you're saying.
Right. So from a core starting point, it seems to me like that's the messaging that has to be there is IT leadership is the problem that we're solving.
But Connor, are you saying then if they have a CIO or IT director that is truly providing IT leadership, that there's no opportunity for co-manage there because they're not going to be looking?
I'm talking just the C-level audience.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if they do have a leader, right, and that leader has said, I need more horsepower out of my IT functions, okay, usually those guys are trying to fill very specific gaps, right? They already have a strategy in mind. They know I'm either trying to beef up my help desk, or I'm trying to beef up my NOC, or I'm trying to beef up my 24/7 coverage, or I'm trying to beef up security services or professional services. Like in those cases, those guys are the leader. They're looking to fill functional gaps, plain and simple. Like to them, it's just like, I can hire to fill these gaps or I can outsource it. Either way, I need the outcome.
Do you foresee a scenario where there's somebody who thinks they're the leader and they're the ones who initially engage, only to then elevate the conversation to C-level to find out C-level doesn't believe they're the leader they think they are, and then you have to shift the conversation?
Usually when those guys are engaging, they need a project.
But then that's not IT
I'm
with
just
us.
saying.
I mean, because in other words, when you say IT done with you, is that only under some sort of contractual like MRR agreement, or would you see that as project work exclusively?
I don't know that it matters.
Well, it does for us. For example, we've got an IT director who reached out to us, and he's basically like, listen,
just to finish that, Jay, is
yeah,
if from a pure marketing standpoint, right, in this conversation, we're marketing agreements.
right.
And so you and I both know that sometimes a project comes along, not an agreement. But from purely where we're putting our marketing energy and focus, yeah, it's agreements.
Okay. That makes sense.
So what's the outcome of that conversation? So what it says is when you say IT leadership is missing, is that you saying that should be on the C-level side, or that should be on the IT partner?
I'm saying that the problem the C-levels usually are trying to solve is the lack of leader.
Right. But then what that means is in those scenarios, then we should be installing a true VCIO, not a VCIO as Gary Pico would define, but a true VCIO.
Well, so if you're going to write a case study as a way to get them to know C-levels, to know, like you, and trust you, I would focus on not what did we do with their knock, or what did we do this, or what did we do that. It's what did we do to change the equation, to change the approach, to change the vision.
Let's to speak to their business pain, which is different than technology.
Right.
And then again, in my opinion, on the IT side, is it's always a functional conversation. Do you have a gap in your help desk? Do you have a gap in your knock? Do you have a gap with firewall management? Do you have a gap with regulatory compliance? You know, the IT people are always trying to fill a gap. When you bring up leadership with the IT people, again, almost always in their mind, they think they are the leader. Even if their boss is sitting in the room and saying, I'm frustrated, what's the plan? What's the strategy? Like, they still come out of that room being like, that guy doesn't know shit. I know everything.
Well, that's what I was speaking to earlier, when you get contacted by that guy who says he's the leader only to find out management doesn't think he is.
And so back to purely from a marketing standpoint, if we do want to market to IT leaders, whether they are the leader or not, but the problem they're trying to solve is usually not leadership. It's some other IT function.
Yeah.
I think that's some good insight.
So, like, if it were me on those two boxes, like under C-level, CFO, and operations, like it all boils down to leadership. And under IT partnership, it all boils down to functions. And so from a messaging standpoint, we have to be talking to the C-levels purely on leadership, IT leadership. What is it?
It's strategic versus tactical.
Right. And on the IT people, if we're marketing to them, it has to be, here's why our knock is great. Here's why our help desk is great. Here's why, whatever it is that, we're slinging, or if it's broader.
Or more so that our help desk or our knock will make you look great.
I agree with you, right? I mean, they definitely want to be successful. It's just IT people are different in terms of how they define success. And you know this, Jay. I mean, it's like a lot of these guys, at least in our world, which is, probably less sophisticated than your guys' markets, like success can be, I solved a cool help desk ticket today. Like they're definitely thinking at that level, which is why the C-levels are always frustrated with them.
Well, and their identity is largely wrapped up in their knowledge versus achievements.
Right. So I don't, it seems to me what the IT guys like is other IT guys in community with other IT guys,
Right.
and less about the outcomes. So when you say, I'm going to make you look great, I'm not so sure they give a shit. Like, I don't think that that's what twists the nipple. I think, that it's just, they like being around other techs and solving technical problems. And
Well, that's
every
why
tech likes what they like. And the more they can do of it, like the happier they seem to be.
I think on the right-hand side, as you're talking, kind of just like brainstorming sense, right? But do they care that they're doing a whole bunch of work that they don't want to do?
They want to hand off their shit work to somebody else.
Yeah. I think the core. I think that's the core, honestly, which is on that side. And I think the more that in our case that, like, I just keep going back to case studies, just as not a precise definition, but a content position. If we can show them how other IT people just like them are getting work off their table and doing more fun things or doing higher value things, that might be the value proposition for them.
The other thing is just I think these guys are struggling to hire, just like everybody else is struggling to hire. And so it's like, what good is hiring if you're going to hire somebody that's underqualified, that is just going to burn a bunch of your time every day.
Maybe you're onto something though, like with the like somebody else in the trenches with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the guy that's on, like I think about the couple agreements we've got, I actually think that's a part of it that they really do appreciate, is that they're not the last line of defense.
Right.
They've got somebody else that's backing them up, and like, I'm going to be there if you're not, and I'm going to be there so you can take a vacation, and I'm going to be there to help you solve a technical problem you get stuck on, like that kind of thing. I think you're onto something with what they care about isn't that the 365 project got rolled out successfully in a month. I think that on the day-to-day at least, it might be more about like, you're not going to get stuck with that problem you don't know the answer to. You're going to have a team like 20 people that might know the answer, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, community shoulders. We've gone so far. Well, we created a Jedi Council Teams channel that's just our co-managed techs, where they can chat with each other, and we're just monitoring their deal. But it's like, it's all nerdy stuff in there. I mean, but they like it. Mm-hmm. They just like that they're able to bounce ideas off of one another and not get, even get first call's opinion. Like, I don't know. What they buy versus what the executives buys are
two different things, right?
Yeah, and in my experience, the executive just wants somebody to take the bull by the horns, say, look, this is what success is. This is how we're going to get there. Here's why you're screwed up. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And they're like, where have you been all my life?
Yeah, exactly. But I actually
so it sounds like
what I want to understand though is, are we saying that there is a set of companies that you guys have encountered where the IT people have driven co-managed deals?
I have not.
I think
every deal we've gotten, it's been C-level frustration.
I agree. That's why I was thinking this drives the interest in the sales. This just kind of keeps the IT people from screwing it up.
Yeah, right. the only doors that we're opening at the IT level is we watch the job posts, which is new for us this year. And if we see an IT manager hiring for IT, we definitely reach out. And it's just a simple thing of, hey, what are you trying to fill with this job? Would you be open to a done with you approach with a partner like ours?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Has that ever worked?
It has.
I think that at least you got discovery meetings. I know for sure.
I mean, it's generating meetings and discussions. Like you said, Jay, sometimes it just leads to a project. Like you know, I met with a guy from a medical center earlier this week. Same thing, he's trying to hire a part-time person to do the shit work he doesn't want to do. Once we engage, it's like, no, we're, you know, a done with you approach doesn't work. But, you know, he did say, hey, my short tail phone system's getting 6 years old. What do you guys do? And then I need some help with my new HP Aruba wireless system. Well, at least there's some project stuff there. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. So I think, to me, we're actually in violent agreement, by the way. Go ahead.
What if we were going to create a single core marketing message towards the C levels? How would it sound? What would you say? One sentence, 2 sentences?
That's the hard part, actually.
Build a team you're confident in.
I like that, Doug. I think that's got some, you know, so, you know, build it. I mean, I'm just going to write stuff down, keep talking.
I mean, can we build on the whole done with you approach? I mean, I think that done for you versus done with you has a lot of power. If we could find a way to kind of build on that, I think that could be valuable.
This is not properly phrased, but I think it's just get shit done. But,
I mean, it's cliche, but you could do the whole get asterisk IT done, but I think that's been played out.
Keep going. I mean,
another one, this isn't a great one, but I think it's changed the game. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're looking for, right? Some big change.
Yeah.
Change the game. Okay. Where'd my pen go?
This is a bad one, but maybe it adds better thoughts, which is, don't be anchored by your IT department. But your success is being hindered. And maybe it's the flip side of that, though, is yours, Connor. Maybe it's just you don't have the right IT. Don't write this down. The thought process is you don't have a leader. I almost think like a horse running around like ice.
I mean, what about something as simple as, we move the IT function from where it is to where it needs to be?
Yeah, that's the game change, right? Change the game.
I mean, that's what they're trying to get to is, where they are to where they want to be. And to take some of that fear out of it, because they don't want to fire their people, right? We work with your IT people to take you from where you are to where you want to be. I mean, that's what the leader wants to see. He's like, I don't want to fire these people. They're hardworking people. I mean, has anybody run into these situations where it's like, I want to fire my people? Because
only a couple times. I mean, what if we said something like, don't fire your people, enhance them. In other words, we're almost like a booster shot of sorts. We're there to add a little extra turbo to your team. We're there to get more performance out of what you already have.
I like that, because the emotion is, I don't want to fire these people.
Yep.
And we've directly addressed the emotion
Yep.
of, you don't have to fire your people.
Right. Supplement them or support them. Or get your team the help they know they need or they want. In other words, in a way, almost make the IT director the hero for coming in. I mean, I think one of the things that we talked about before you joined, Connor, is, the target audience for this is probably maximum 1 to 3 IT person staff. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're either talking to a solo guy or a guy that's got 1 or 2 employees maybe, and I think even 3 is a stretch, frankly. So it's really, speaking to that very, very small team.
All right, stay on that. Don't fire your IT people.
Or maybe it's
Then what? Don't fire IT people. Supplement them's the wrong word, right?
If it's somebody that only has like 1 employee, you could
maybe, I mean, because this is really what we're doing, right? It's don't fire them, change your approach.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Right, but we just don't want to suggest for a moment that they even considered firing them, right? In other words, because they could even take offense to that is, well.
It's really not firing them, it's actually changing their work, right? Because there's a lot of things in IT they can do well, right? What we're just saying is let them focus on that and we'll focus on this other stuff that's not core to your business.
Half the time, either they've set themselves up to fail or the executives have. They just don't know any better. Don't fire your IT people. Shift their approach.
Right. I think that's the core of what we're saying.
What's that?
Is that softer? Shift their approach? Don't fire IT people, shift the approach.
I still think that even suggesting that the idea of entertaining firing them, though, even sounds like
that was your sweet idea.
Yeah, I can change it.
That's true. That's true. All right. So if
Doug?
I was gonna say I don't think you can. Yeah, I don't think you need to make the marketing about firing people.
Right.
I think it's about enhancing or supporting or maximizing or just like, if we can think about an analogy, like what would be another example of where you have an existing team or you have something and you kind of bring something in to bolster it or to kind of
what if we just
accelerate it?
The IT with you approach. Right. With you says nobody's getting fired.
Mm-hmm.
IT has to be in there. And what we're really talking about is changing the approach.
Right.
You can't just change people. You can't just throw more bodies at it. You can't just throw more money at it. Like if you want to get a different outcome, you're going to have to change the approach.
I think the other thing we can build on is this idea too around just, we mentioned it before you joined, that there's this hiring challenge right now, and we could almost make it like a competitive advantage of instead of trying to struggle and get help for your team, this is a way to
but you hire a team, in effect you're hiring a team of 10 people, right?
We're like injecting steroids into your existing help desk team.
Yep.
Without all the side effects.
I don't know. I thought about more like when there's like I don't know the military terms, but there's like the unit that's there on the ground, but then There's also like the guys in the air. There's the sniper that's in the back. There's the SWAT team that's helping them get through the city. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Special ops.
it's like the extra support, like the extra, specialized extra support. I don't know, something along those lines.
Or even like when cops call for backup, like.
Yeah.
What?
State, and I, marketing has to be like super duper high level.
Mhm.
And so
To use the
if the technical guy is, likes being around other technical people, right? The problem we're solving for them is loneliness. Right. So
Right.
I don't have peers. I don't have people to talk to. That's their emotional problem. I'm alone. I feel overwhelmed, even though I'm not admitting it.
What a shame it is, because this is already used in our industry, so it probably isn't available. But PAX 8 has that term, will be your wingman, and
Right.
you got to give them credit for the brilliance of that, right? I mean, because
right.
And what's funny is it's even more applicable in this situation than it is in theirs. We should tell them they're not allowed to use it anymore because it fits better for us. But they might not like that.
What's analogous to that?
To a wingman?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at synonyms of wingman. I mean, it's funny. I have yet to have a marketing conversation that doesn't end up with me on synonyms or thesaurus.com looking up words.
Right. I mean, but maybe it's something geographic, like Doug, you're in Texas. Is that join your posse.
Don't be the Lone Ranger. We'll be Tonto.
Right. I mean, it's a posse, right? I mean, it's I love the Lone Ranger thing, right? Sucks being the Lone Ranger. Don't you wish you had a posse? I think Jay's on, in terms of that's what like it is, the wingman thing. Is there a way to do it just more, based off your geo?
Assistant, accomplice, deputy, accessory, aid, backer.
I mean, Jay, aren't you kind of in the ghetto? I mean,
well, I mean, compared to Montana,
they're IT homies. That's a joke, Jay. That's a joke.
I know.
We switched gears a little bit about what we got to do next. I got to get out at 4:15. You guys can continue.
I think this is like the big thing. Like, if you could just get the messaging right,
Agree.
then it tells you, well, what case studies do I need? What blogs do I need? What email campaigns do I need? But the messaging is so wrong, right? I think
it's two things counter to. I would almost say, just like what I tried to do in the website page is a little long. I'd say if we can on one page define the value proposition, then that can drive all the content. If we can in one page encapsulate what we think is the core business, the value proposition and the pain points I think that's all you need.
How about squadron, Jay? Right? More than, having multiple wingmen is having a squadron.
Right, or a co-pilot, or crew. We're your crew. You're like
crew.
We're your battalion, or your like if you're going to war with somebody, what's the name of your cohort, right? Because I mean, that's the way these guys look at it, like they're going to war.
Squad.
Right, band of brothers.
Yeah, we're your squad. So I do think that there's still an angle there with the whole done with you thing. Like, if you think about the whole done with you thing, if you were looking at somebody to do something with you instead of for you or whatever, You know, again, that's where I think Wingman would be so perfect if it wasn't already taken. You know, what would be another example of something that's done with you? You know, not apprentice, but
Yeah, what's the metaphor?
well, when you got somebody riding shotgun with you, right? I mean, that probably works from Montana, right? Somebody riding shotgun on the stagecoach.
Also works in,
It works in Texas too. What'd you say?
it works in Cleveland too.
Right.
Or no, Toledo, not Akron. All right, so where do we go from here, dudes?
I think we're trying to do the work of marketing at this point. I think we've done a pretty good job of outlining kind of the strategy and the framework and everything. I think what we ought to do is, Michael, if you could, I know you recorded this, if you could take this recording and send it to us. Connor, are you in agreement that most of this legwork is going to be done by our respective marketing teams?
Yeah.
So if we're all in agreement on that, then what do we need to do to probably get them up to speed on this and get the ball rolling? And I think, you know, what we can't do is just, you know, kick this over the fence and say, do it. We probably need to work a little bit more closely with them. Here's what I would propose is, Michael, if you could send us the recording of this, we could ask each of our marketing people to independently watch this recording, kind of get their wheels turning a little bit. And then maybe what we do is set up one more call where we get all of us together with our marketing people, including us, and then start actually getting this marching down this direction. From this recording, hopefully they'll get a good vision of kind of what we're looking at from a campaign perspective and so on. They'll get some of the ideas about the vision, and then maybe on that meeting we can start to divide up the effort, because obviously what we don't want is, we don't want, you know, 3 different people writing blog articles at the same time. Like maybe one person on one team takes on a blog article, another one takes on like a case study, another one takes on, you know, one other thing, Connor, that you missed at the beginning is when we're talking about case studies is, you know, do we believe that you can have kind of like an anonymous case study that is applicable to all of our businesses and we share it amongst ourselves, or do we believe that case studies really truly need to be unique to our company and have to be a real customer that exists only for us? Michael seems to believe that, you know, you can have it more generic and have it unnamed and make it applicable. That just ruins my trust in all case studies I see online going forward, but oh well. But if you're in agreement.
I still want to get the messaging nailed.
I agree.
And if we've got creative people we can engage, I mean, why not just say, look, watch this, you know, video, this recording, and then each of you draft up 5 different core messages, 1 to 2 sentence, just like we're talking about. And then when we meet, let's just go over those, and whoever wins, let's spiff them $250.
Well, now that's part of the recording, so that's officially the offer now, I think.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just, the industry has got this thing wrong from just a messaging standpoint.
Correct.
The needs are there, the pains are there. They're not hard to list out, but until you can get the messaging right, man, it's a struggle, because the barriers immediately go up to the sales process.
Right, agreed. Well, I think we've got some good next steps then. So are we in agreement that we're going to have all of our marketing people watch the recording, and then we will, actually, Michael, does it make sense that when you send out the recording, maybe we even try to set a date for this next conversation to kind of have a deadline for, got to get this video watched by this date, because we're all going to be on a meeting to discuss next steps. And then from there, we can start to kind of dole out, you know, who's going to do what work, and then we can kind of come back and compare notes and actually start to build out this campaign. I think maybe part of this next discussion with the marketing people is actually to start to put together kind of like a campaign framework of, okay, you know, we've agreed there's going to be a different message for C-level people. There's a different level for IT partnership people. We're all going to attack the C-level campaign to start with. Okay, this is what the C-level campaign looks like. The C-level campaign is going to be made up of these components. It's 8 things. Okay, you take these 2 things, you take these 2 things, you take these 2 things, and then we reconvene after a certain amount of time to see what did everybody come up with. If we like that, then we shift gears and we do the IT partnership angle with the same model and knock that out, and we just keep churning it out then. Because I think ultimately, Michael, I think that's the biggest problem we have with this collaboration thing that's caused it to kind of fall short is we don't have a framework for how we even approach the collaboration. We just say, hey, let's collaborate. Great. Everybody do something and share it. And then that never happens. What we need to do is have this framework that we follow consistently. And every time we want to go after a vertical like this or any kind of messaging, we just follow the same framework.
That's why we're doing it. This is why we're doing it.
No, I think,
But I also think
we're making progress.
Have a more contained and dedicated group. It wasn't by accident I picked the three of you guys, right? Or Connor volunteered to pick the other two because all three of you got good marketing people, right?
Yeah.
And all three of you execute, right? You know, I won't denigrate any of our STB brethren, but there's a lot of people that talk a lot, don't execute, right? So we'll get, this is an attempt to solve that problem that we had in the past.
Cool. Well, good. Then
All right.
sounds like it's been productive. Thank you for spending the time. Looking forward to the email, Michael. Then you got the next step of sending out the recording and the next scheduled meeting. Then.
I will. We'll do
Okay.
today.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks,
Julie.
guys.
Thanks, Connor. See you guys. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
good to see you, Doug.
Yep. Goodbye.